Welcome to Weathering Minds, where we discuss how the weather outside affects the weather inside your mind. I'm your host, Daisy Whittington, and today's topic is weather's role in cultural well-being. We're going to discuss how different cultures perceive and react to weather patterns, and also discuss traditional practices, rituals, and beliefs related to weather. Now, you may be wondering, Daisy, what do you mean by weather's role in cultural well-being? Well, what I mean by that is, how do various cultural perceptions of weather across the world differ, and how is weather a really big or a really small part of different cultures across the world? So I think the best way to investigate this is through anthropological studies, which, if you don't know, anthropology, if I'm pronouncing that right, or anthropology, I think, is the study of human beings, human culture, and human practices. So looking at these studies, it's a really good way to highlight how societies interpret and respond to weather, and it also showcases the connection between weather patterns and their cultural identity. After reading 5 or 6 different studies, which I'll definitely link in my podcast description so you can take a peek at them too, is that there's been advances in scientific understanding of the atmosphere over the last 300 years that have really benefited a lot of different communities, both culturally and in like a scientific growth way. And this is because in the late 20th century, there was a major shift in incorporating traditional ecological knowledge in meteorology. So what do I mean by that? Before this big shift happened, this new era, we were using all the new knowledge, the math, the science that we have learned from modern meteorology and modern statistics within the meteorology, science. But after understanding these anthropological studies and everything like that, scientists started to understand that Native American tribes and a lot of different cultures across the world have a lot of really insightful conversations that they can have with them about weather and how it's important to them in their culture, and their knowledge has actually really helped deepen the understanding of modern meteorology. So integrating this traditional knowledge reflects a newer, holistic approach to meteorology in the recent years, and this knowledge has actually helped climate science progress quite a bit. By using this old knowledge, they have been able to progress climate science and find new, unknown ways to help the climate crisis. So that's interesting. That's one way weather and culture connect, but it also transitions us into the importance of utilizing indigenous wisdom and understanding responding to weather, which also leads me into the Native American folklore and mythology around weather meteorology, because there is so much of it that we're going to dive into today. So the Ojibwe tribe, which is a Native American nation that once surrounded Lake Superior, have this weather personality, Peboan, if I'm pronouncing that right, which is their winter spirit. A lot of different tribes have these spirits, but this is one of the better known ones within the Native American nations across the United States. So Peboan is described to look like an old man as a spirit, and the legend is that when he walks across the land every year at winter time, everywhere he steps freezes or turns quote-unquote as hard as flint. They also have a spring spirit named Seguin, and it's a similar story, whereas Seguin, walks at springtime and brings spring to life every year. That's just one of many Native American legends in a lot of different tribes. Others include Paloma, which is an evil bird spirit, that the Penobscot Indians believe to reside in the mountains. Legend has it he protects these mountains by stirring up powerful winds with his wings and conjuring cold, snowy storms. Similarly, the Thunderbird, another figure, which is a very common Native American weather figure throughout a lot of different tribes, is described as an enormous bird responsible for the sound of thunder. Legends like these demonstrate how weather is intertwined with cultural narratives and shows how they symbolize protection, power, and natural phenomena. These legends also not only are so culturally significant, but as I said, yeah, they might sound a little unrealistic or silly at times, but they're making big changes, like I said, within the climate world and the meteorology world, because meteorologists are seeing the importance of these stories and how they can help maybe not exactly bring more science into it, but bring more of a just like diverse perspective and understanding within the world of meteorology, and not having it all be science, but also just experience and just cultural differences within the world of meteorology. So I think that's really interesting how the Native Americans have all those different legends and stories. But it's not just Native Americans who have these traditional practices and rituals. Many, many different countries across all 7 continents have a lot of different like weather-related practices that they do. The most common being some form of rainmaking. Rainmaking is a weather ritual that you can guess is where rain is summoned through some sort of way that the countries believe can like either please gods or please the sky, please clouds, etc., to bring rain down on the nation. So let's break down different countries and continents that do rainmaking in different ways and how it's culturally important to them. So first, let's go through North America. I know we already talked a little bit about Native American tribes, but I thought this was so interesting that I wanted to put it in a different section. So we have the rain dance of Zuri, if I'm pronouncing that right. This is a rain dance that is done in a lot of different Native American tribes. And in this rain dance, feathers and turquoise are worn to symbolize the rain and wind. And dancers will try to summon the spirits of the gods to cleanse the earth with rain. So why is this so culturally significant? There's no like specific study saying this is why, but I think it's interesting because this has been passed down orally from generation to generation, and it's still to this day very integral to their culture. I think some people assume that in modern day some Native American tribes have kind of grown to, you know, with the rest of the world do science or whatever, or just like side more science. They have still kept these amazing traditions from centuries ago and truly still believe in them, which I think is just a really beautiful thing. And Native Americans not only would do these rain dances, they also believed in their own early form of meteorology. They would often track and follow known weather patterns while offering to perform a rain dance for settlers in return for trade. So they almost had a business side to it. So they would be tracking the weather patterns, but they would also do these rain dances to settlers in return for goods. And that just is, I think, a funny, interesting business tidbit. Let's get into Africa and how they do different types of rainmaking. So rain is a central concern of African societies, not just in a physical way, but in a cultural way. It's very culturally important. Rainmaking is seen as a spiritual act that requires the intervention of the quote-unquote divine, the ancestors, and the elements. The power to make rain or, you know, bring rainfall is usually attributed to African kings or African royalty, if you say so. Kings who fail to produce rain usually run the risk of assassination or death or resignation because it's seen as such a culturally important thing within Africa. This illustrates that in African culture, weather controls political and spiritual significance in maintaining societal stability. And what I mean by that is rain is just not important for their crops. It's not just important for the sustainability of their humans and animals. It's important in a like political and spiritual sense, because if you can't bring down the rain, basically you have no power in the eyes of Africa and their kings. So I think that's just also another really interesting thing. And it's interesting to compare that to Native Americans and how they almost used it as a business tactic and like more of a worshiping the gods kind of thing, whereas Africa took it more as a power route, which I just think is really interesting to see how these niche rainmaking things, so they sound so similar, but they're actually very different across the world. Let's get into Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia has a lot of different rituals for rainmaking. There's so many I can link in the description, but the one I found the most interesting was, please like bear with my pronunciation of this, He Nang Ma Nya, which is the procession of the lady cat in Thai translation. And this is normally done in Cambodia, and this is when a cat is carried around in procession through village streets while citizens splash the water at the cat. And I guess the like theory behind this is that, you know, the rain is falling down on the cat, so rain will then fall down on the humans within this village. So again, it seems a little, you know, irrational or not like logical, but these are actually really beautiful practices. They're super interesting, and it just kind of shows how different cultures do different things. And like I said, it also shows how between the different countries they have very different ways of doing it and just like different priorities with the rainmaking. In China, Wu shamans perform sacrificial rain dance ceremonies in times of drought. They were also believed to control rainfall and flooding. So in China, they were the main source of quote-unquote power around rain dances. So those are the main countries I wanted to go over today. I think, the main theme of this episode is that weather actually has a huge impact on cultures around the world. I feel like before I researched this episode, I would have never guessed that. But I think it's really interesting how the different countries have different priorities when it comes to weather and different just like cultural views of it. I found it so fascinating how it's more of a political power thing in Africa, how it's more desperate times call for desperate measures in China with the droughts. I think it's just really interesting to see how big of a weather impact weather can make on different cultures around the world. And I really hope you will tune in next time when we talk about how weather impacts mental health, specifically within the eyes of meteorologists. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please tune in for next month's episode, and thank you so much.